What's happening in the gamer movement right now is an echo of the larger push towards socialism. There was a guy named Ross Scott who started a movement called Stop Killing Games. And the idea behind the movement of Stop Killing Games is very straightforward. I paid my money and I want my product. This is Ross Scott.
So I'm launching the largest ever campaign to stop video games from being destroyed. The first is Ubisoft has recently shut down The Crew, which had at least 12 million players. Sign those and maybe get the law to change.
The reason that I want to talk about this is not about video games. This is about who's going to save us. What is the root of the problem? Who's going to save us? And so you have these huge influencers pointing out a real problem. To your point, this is literally what you were talking about. Capitalist gonna capitalist. These guys see an opportunity to choke their game out at their discretion when they want. Keep your money, kill the game, either to push you into version 2 or whatever. There are mustaches being twirled. There's no doubt about that. However, there are also realities to be faced about how do you solve this problem. And because the way modern gaming is, you can stop supporting a game and then people will no longer be able to play it. One, when you've paid money for something, you can understand why people would be frustrated with that. But second, you can also understand that there's just something, when you buy a thing, like you want to feel like you have it, that it's yours. I completely understand where the movement is coming from. Now, where this really got spicy is a game developer and influencer named PirateSoftware came out and just shit all over this and was like, this is fucking stupid. Literally, and I quote, "They can eat my whole ass." The amount of stupid I just had to sit through was like 10 minutes on Reddit or on Twitter or something like that. He went pretty hard in the paint, saying that this is dumb. Asmongold is all for Stop Killing Games. MoistCr1TiKaL is all for Stop Killing Games. Obviously, Ross Scott is all for Stop Killing Games. And Thor has become, PirateSoftware, has become like the main, he's seen as the mustache twirling villain in all of this. What I wanna do is paint a picture for how I think the Stop Killing Games movement could move forward and get what they want. But this to me feels like a microcosm. And by the way, if anybody thinks that this isn't something we should be covering, this is getting millions and millions of views. Like this is touching a fucking nerve and I think is tied to all the things that we talk about. So anyway, PirateSoftware was playing World of Warcraft and I'm only a headline reader on this. I was not involved in any of this drama. I didn't track it, but when something like this, he was involved in a game World of Warcraft. They ended up going into a place where they were in danger, and I think World of Warcraft is either roguelite or roguelike. That means if your character dies, your character is dead. You are starting over. A bunch of them like scrambled to run away, and he was a healer. And so as a healer to scramble away, people just felt some kind of way about that. And a bunch of them died, and I think he ended up surviving. So anyway, people were already mad about him, mad about that because he just kept doubling down. It wasn't my fault, it wasn't my fault. So anyway, while there may be very just criticism there.
Can you straw man the arguments right now?
Straw man them?
Yeah, because
straw man them.
Yeah, straw man.
Not steal. You want me to give the worst argument possible?
Steal man the arguments.
Okay,
it's
got
Friday,
it.
7 a.m. Sorry, guys. I understand. I see why it makes sense. I see why it doesn't make sense. This is a top-down move, because all games are different. Some games are online, some games are single player, some games can be local, some games. So it seems like they say to be a broad banner doesn't make sense. So I'm just trying to figure out what is this person saying, what is this person saying, and where is kind of that divide.
MoistCr1TiKaL said, listen, this is just about you paid money for a thing and you don't want someone else to be able to take that thing away from you. So for instance, if you buy a car, if you buy it outright and you're not leasing it, then nobody can take that car back from you. If you bought a Nintendo game back in 1989, no one was going to be able to come into your house and take that cartridge back. Once you bought it, you had it forever. They believe that there are mustache twirling victims, that mustache twirling villains that are saying to maximize profit, we're going to make a normal game that doesn't rely on multiplayer or anything, that it goes up to a server to say, am I a legitimate copy of this game? Not as an anti-piracy mechanism, which I've heard some of them, I don't want to lump everybody together, but some of them have even claimed, like, even doing that, asshole, just means you're overcharging for your game. But let's set that aside for a second. Having them reach up to the server, not so you can validate that this is a legitimate copy of the game, you're having them do that so you can kill the game whenever you want. They believe, if tested in a court of law, would probably lose. and that consumer protections would come up around that, and that game companies would be forced to stop doing that. And so they are trying to get legislators to stop doing that, to pass some sort of law. And they are very clear. This is not legal language that we are proposing. We are merely trying to get the signatures on this petition that we need in order to get legislation to take effect. That's where sort of all this kicked off, because so that's argument number one. Argument number two, represented by Pirate Software, this doesn't make any sense. People that are promoting this do not understand how games are actually developed. If you understood the architecture of games, you would limit this to just single player games that don't require anything on the server to continue running after they get done supporting the game. At the headline level of Pirate Software, I might be being a little generous. The way that he worded it could be interpreted the exact opposite way. I think Pirate Software is being misinterpreted because he came out so hot and was so inflammatory with the hot takes, which everybody loves hot takes. Let's not pretend, boys and girls, that that's not what gets clicks. So, but because he did that, and it came on the heels of people feeling like he really mishandled the World of Warcraft moment. So you get this 1-2 punch where I think people are being a little uncharitable. But my read maybe is overly charitable. So once I lay his out, I'll tell you what my actual take is. But my very charitable interpretation of Pirate Software is that what he's saying is if you limited the scope of your take on Stop Killing Games to single player games that are using the server merely to validate that this is a legitimate copy of the game, then okay, this is fine. But if you try to cover multiplayer games, you don't understand the server architecture. And because you don't understand the server architecture, you're asking for something that would be so cost prohibitive, or that the developer, if they chose to stop supporting the game, they would be in a position where they have to turn code over to the community, which could be, first of all, now you're just giving up your IP. That's patently absurd. And then second of all, you now create a perverse incentive for people to try to get the player base to stop paying for the game, stop paying for the DLCs, stop paying for the skins or whatever it is that you're using to monetize your game so that the community can take control of it. And so now you're creating this really weird adversarial relationship. I think he's right about that. But because he's a developer, and full disclosure, so am I, they're like, you're just fucking saying that because this is exactly how you run your game. Okay, so that's the setup that you have. In the refutations that I've seen specifically from Ross Scott on Pirate Software, they really do seem hung up on this single player thing. I think Pirate Software is saying, no, you need to limit the scope of this to single player games. And they're saying, you don't understand. We're not trying to limit it to single player games. So I'm saying that's his problem. So anyway, that could be projection because that is my problem. If this movement is about, okay, we want to protect consumers. We don't want to limit the kind of games that can be made, because you would do that. If you force, I would suddenly become terrified of building an MMO, because if I know once I launch this, I have to continue to support it or hand over my IP at the end of this, no. You're going to have a dramatic impact on the kind of games that get developed. But I understand what they're going for, which is, if I pay for something, I want to make sure that I actually have it. I think if they narrowed the focus of this, you could probably get a lot more people supporting it, get a lot more signatures, get the actual legislation that's reasonable, moving in the right direction. Because remember, legislators don't understand video games. They understand it far less than the players, and the players understand it far less than the developers. So you don't want to be in a position where you've got people that they have call it a righteous emotional response to something. They're trying to move that into legislation, which is, hey, in a democratic setup, that's exactly your right and your privilege, and you should be taking advantage of it to push legislators to create the kind of legislation that you want. Here for that is how the system should work. But in all of that, you want to make sure that you actually understand how this is all going to play out, given the realities of actually building a game. And that's where I think this all begins to fall apart.
So what are people missing? Because as a game developer, me outside looking in, it seems like a no-brainer. Like, if it's a multiplayer game that requires an internet connection, that requires somebody to upkeep that environment for which that internet connection in the game can be active, that's not a sunk cost, that's not cheap, so somebody's gonna have to keep maintaining that services. So you can,
and just to make that even more complicated, you might be using third-party solutions that you're paying for that allow your game to run. And so now I have to force them to also make their stuff available. It's like on the MMO side, I am surprised that the Stop Killing Games movement doesn't go, okay, cool, that doesn't make sense. I would love to see all of these guys be way more collaborative. And in fairness to MoistCr1TiKaL, that's basically, I might be being overly generous here as well, but MoistCr1TiKaL felt like he was trying to do that kind of outreach to Thor at PirateSoftware. His representation of the exchange is that PirateSoftware is just not willing to learn. He's not willing to realize that he was wrong. Other than the sort of slander of the hot take, I'm not like the things that I have heard about PirateSoftware's breakdown directly from PirateSoftware's mouth don't seem incorrect. So that's the part where I'm like, like if you're trying to back him into a corner and say, you don't understand, he's just going to keep doubling down and being like, no, you don't understand how these games are made. So anyway, my pitch to the Stop Killing Games movement would be narrow the scope to single player games. They're not going to have to hand over IP or anything like that. Work with somebody who's a developer that actually understands the sort of gotchas that will say, okay, you're not going to want to push down the MMO route as just one example because these are the perverse incentives that that's going to create. Start with this. Start with like, this game could be on a CD and hand it to me and it would play just fine in the woods with electricity but no internet connection. If you're not mapping cause and effect and you're still at the level of like, I'm just angry, you're not going to get the specificity that you need to get this stuff across the finish line in a way that will actually help your cause.
Can't the open market handle this? Offer games with this as a feature and let people buy those games over the quote unquote bad ones.
Yeah, so this is exactly my pitch. So there's a guy here who may be in the chat. George, if you're here, definitely pop off. So we have a guy here at Impact Theory. We're developing Project Kaizen, which, wow! I'm wearing the shirt today, not because I knew we were going to talk about this, but because we have our first play test today, Drew.
Let's go.
Oh, God, I'm so excited for our new mode. And
is that open to people?
Only to our bug testers for right now. But I am so pumped for this.
Check the Discord. We have Kaizen like meetups and links so you guys
and
can
in a month, though, we are opening it up to our community.
Let's go.
Okay, having said that, George has been haranguing me for a long time. He's like, don't build a live service game. George, I can build a way cooler game doing live service. And by the way, ironically, it's socialist because when you do a live service game, you're saying, so take me, I am paying for God knows how many people to play Fortnite because I buy so many skins, because I'm such a pop culture freak that when a skin comes out for John Wick or Luke Skywalker or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, whatever, I'm that guy and I'm buying all of that stuff. It's free to play, so anybody that wants to play can play forever and they never have to buy a skin if they don't want to. Epic is able to do that because of people like me who spend ungodly amounts of money. Now, George is like, Tom, but you don't understand. That creates an adversarial relationship between the developer and the players, because now what's happening is you're creating an incentive where the developers are going to put all their money into the skins and they're not going to put it into making the game better. And I was like, George, that's insane. And the reason that's insane is when you make a game for free, because George is trying to convince me, don't make the game free to play, even though 7 out of the top 10 games on Steam are free to play. But don't make the game free to play. Instead, charge people money up front, make the game what he calls feature complete. And I'm like, George, how about we make a game feature complete, but we let people play it for free? Because otherwise, you're forcing everybody to pay for all the DLCs and all that for me to do the continuing development that I'm going to want to do. Plus, it's just way easier to get people to try to play your game. And my pitch is, George, the most compelling argument that when you keep pushing for me to charge for this game is that will help me sleep better because I can make a worse game, force you to buy it up front, and as long as I'm good at hype marketing, I'm going to get my money back. And so you're in that way turning me into the hype man,
a marketer
who's like, I just have to have a big first weekend.
Yeah.
If I get a big first weekend, then fuck you guys. If the game is bad, doesn't matter. I got my money. You guys are toast. If I'm making a game where I have to get you so emotionally involved that you will voluntarily pay for these skins, then I've created a game that people are way more into. Now, George, if you're right, and I've actually created an adversarial relationship with the players, then there's a huge opportunity for an indie game developer to go, guess what, guys? That's the one thing we don't do. We're a feature complete game. We don't, there's no in-game transactions. This is just, you pay me your $60, you get your game, and that's it. We've got a nice, clean relationship. Great. Either way, that option is on the table, and if it's real and that it will incentivize you to build a better game, then somebody's going to fill the void by building that better game. This is where I'm like, guys, instead of doing all these authoritarian top-down games can only be made this way kind of things, if that's a real opportunity, like be loud, tell people, hey, dear developers, this is the kind of game that we want. We'd really get behind this kind of game 100%. And then there's really an opportunity. But I look at it as a consumer and a developer, and I'm just like, well, hold on a second. A, there's a reason that 7 out of the top 10 games on Steam are free to play, because you can just get people into the game. And B, they're rolling the dice that they can make the game so compelling that you'll voluntarily pay for things you don't need in the game. My own personal bias is I despise pay to win. They should be allowed. People should be able to make it if they want. I find it gross. I don't know why people play it. I don't think it should be illegal. But again, I get the emotion behind this and would love to see them narrow the scope so they can actually get this across the finish line.